What's up, y'all? Thanks for tapping back in or tapping in for the first time. I can't decide if this is like we're getting the old podcast up and running again or we're starting a new one. It's got the same name. I don't think we're going to change the name. We're not. It's the Full-Time Dreamer podcast. But when I started this podcast, I gotta top off my coffee real quick. When I started this podcast, it was a place just to kind of educate and encourage musicians, and it was very specific to that. Oh yeah, let's go. But my heart has kind of grown so much more for just the creative pursuit in general. I want this podcast to be a place where we can share what we're after with our life here in the Flanagan family, my music specifically, and all the different creative projects we have our hands in, and let it be a witness to those listening, to y'all, to press more fully into the gifts and talents that God has given you. I quit my job. It's almost 2 years ago now to do music full time, and I quit my job to be a musician. And well, first I really just became a salesman because I quit my job to be an artist, and then I was like just trying to book shows for like 3 weeks straight, and it just felt like sales calls all the time. So I joke with people like, oh, I quit my job to be an artist, and I just became a salesman. But really, I quit my job to be an artist, and I really just quit my job to pursue God's call for my life. And so this has been almost much more of a radical pursuit of Jesus and trying to hear his voice and know who he is, and trust him so intimately with our family and our finances and my career success and everything, the songs that I'm writing, my creative process. Like, this has been really just a pursuit of surrender daily to what God has for us. And it's been awesome, and it's been difficult, and it's been up, and it's been down. And we're going to get into all that on all of these episodes. I want to keep these short. We're going to drop them the first Thursday of every month, 15, 20, 30 minutes max. And it'll just be a place for me to share what God's doing and what he's speaking and fun things that are happening in my life, and bring my friends on who I've gotten to know over these handful of years, all kind of industry professionals, creative people, just people with inspiring stories that I think y'all could learn from. And again, my hope is that this podcast would just be a reflection of my life. And my prayer for my life is that the way that I live and the way that our family lives and the mission that we're on, to raise our family and to build a family built on and based on the dreams that he's placed on our hearts, would encourage you and inspire you to live more boldly and more faithfully in your own life and whatever journey and adventure that you're on. So this is just going to be a witness podcast, and we're going to hop on this mic once a month and witness to what God's doing in our life, in hopes that it would encourage y'all to press more fully into what God has for you in your life. And as people have asked over the last year and a half, 2 years, like, hey, how's it been going? You quit your job to be musician full time. How's it going? I've been searching for the right answer to that question, because I never want to come off too strong, like, oh, it's been amazing, like, you should quit your job too. It's like, well, that's not the goal. The goal isn't just to quit jobs, and that would be silly. Like, the goal is to pursue God's call for your life. And so I've been racking my brain of like, how can I wrap up everything I've learned over the last 2 years, almost 2 years, into a simple phrase that could encapsulate where I'm at, what I'm going through, that wouldn't sugarcoat where I'm at, but also really encourage somebody in that short amount of time that we have when we're talking. And here's what I've come up with, is that when people ask me, hey, how has it been going? Like, what's it been like? I'll say, here's what I've come to find, that the fullness of a life with Jesus is on the other side of complete risk. That's been the story of these last almost 2 years, is that the fullness of a life with Jesus is on the other side of complete risk. And I don't know what that risk is for your life. But the risk for us was quitting my job at the time, we had 3 kids. We were expecting our 4th. Now we have 4 amazing girls. And I quit my job right before we had our 4th daughter to go full-time on my artistry. And we had as much of a plan as was humanly possible, but like, God was very specific in the way he asked us to quit and to go full-time. So we didn't have a huge landing pad. Like, we didn't have, tons of money waiting for us on the other side. I didn't have 100 shows booked. I didn't have anything lined up that would provide worldly security. All I had was a conviction on my heart, and a very peaceful conviction that we discerned for a long time, which we'll get into that on future episodes, as to how we as a family heard God's voice in all of this. But I was very convicted. Katie and I were very convicted and very peaceful about this decision. But it's been a wild ride. I mean, as you can imagine, like trying to make a full-time living off of music, specifically in Christian pop and hip hop, and raise a family is not easy. And it's been amazing though. Like it's been so joy-filled. It's been such an adventure. It's given so much freedom to our family life. But at the same time, it's been very difficult. And there's been a lot of trial and a lot of suffering and sacrifice. And we'll get into all that in future episodes. But in all of it, I have come to know God in such deep, intimate ways, ways that I never could have expected, in ways that I think back, had we never pushed through the fear and had we never taken that leap of faith, I would not know God in the ways that I do now. And that makes me sad to think like, whoa, I wouldn't know how good he is. I would not know how faithful he is. I would not know how trustworthy he is. And I can't imagine living my whole life not knowing the things that I know now about who God is. That's been the biggest fruit of this journey so far. It's just this deep, intimate knowledge of who the Lord is in new and powerful ways in my life. And so, and I think I see so many people get to that point, and then the fear of like what tomorrow may hold always outweighs the courage they have to make the jump or take the leap and whatever it is. And that breaks my heart. And that's what I'm hoping this podcast could be, is a place of encouragement to just start. And maybe these episodes and our story will be enough to help give you guys that nudge, whatever it is in your life, because I see so often in so many people, specifically the next generation, the fear of what may happen tomorrow dictate decisions for today. And that's fear of like, will I make enough money? Will I have enough opportunity? Well, I'll never be like that person. Comparison sets in. Like all of these things start to dictate decisions today about what God is speaking them today. So fears of tomorrow start to infiltrate and get in the way of what God is saying today. And then they let those fears and the voices of tomorrow get too loud, and it holds them back from going all in on what God is calling them to. And that's dangerous territory, because I think it's where we become super complacent and we never become fully alive as who God created us to be. And that's where our dreams and our desires go to die. And that may sound extreme, but I just see it play out all the time. And so I would hope that this podcast and our life, the way we live our life, serves as a witness to encourage anyone who's watching or listening to press more fully into the gifts and talents God has given them, to dream big with the Lord about what he may have for their life, and to go all in on what he's calling them to. And maybe that's a career change. Maybe it's just a hobby. Maybe it's just a simple way of raising your family. Maybe I have no idea. I have no idea what the call is on your life from the Lord. But what I do know is, my guess is he's probably calling you deeper into that. And there's probably some fear around that. And you need the encouragement to take the risk and take a leap of faith. And all I can say is that, again, the fullness of a life with Jesus is on the other side of complete risk. And that risk looks different for everybody. But I hope that we're living in a way that would encourage people to press more fully into that risk, because the fear that we see in tomorrow is not nearly as scary once you're in the tomorrows. It's really not. Like it's so much more daunting to look at it from afar, but once you're in it, it's like, it's in some ways it's beautiful. It would almost be like looking at a big, huge mountain range, being like, I could never climb those mountains, right? I would get lost in the thick of it. And then you get in it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful in here. Like, it's hard, and the climbing's hard, the hiking's hard, but the scenery's amazing. You're constantly struck by the wonder and awe of nature. And again, you're working hard, you're sweating, you're hiking, but it's beautiful. And that's kind of how I feel about fear, is like, you can look at it and it can paralyze you because it's so big and so daunting. But then once you're in it, you're like, wait a second, this journey's actually beautiful. And it's hard and difficult, but the fear that I thought was so big and bad is actually what's motivating me and propelling me forward, and is actually what's shaping me by pressing into it. So that's what the Full-Time Dreamer podcast is going to be about. That's what our life is about, is pushing into that fear, pushing past it, and trying to live a life that is radically after who God is and what he has for our life. And so, again, first Thursday of every month, we're going to be dropping these episodes. And who knows, we'll do more if we have more to say and we have capacity. I got a new album coming out soon. And this will also be a place for you all to get all the behind the scenes and updates on my music first. So if you're subscribing to this podcast, you'll get all the first updates on what's coming up. So I haven't even promoted this at all yet, but I'm working on an album, 10 songs, none of which have been shared anywhere online. These will be 10 brand new songs. We're just going to drop it this summer, and I can't wait. It's called Seasons, and it's all about this season of life we're in and how beautiful it's been, how difficult it's been. It's all the ups and downs of what the last 2 years have been for my family. So can't wait for y'all to hear it. Hey, share this with somebody. If you're watching on YouTube, share a YouTube link. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Music, send this to someone who you think needs to be encouraged. And we will see you next time on the pod. So stoked to be doing this again. Peace.